Okay, so today I decided to change it up again, and since it's such a beautiful day, I wanted to come outside, and I found a park. I haven't been here before. I think it's Cypress Grove Park, and I'm going to turn the camera around just a little bit so you can see the lake. Okay, so I'm literally sitting here on the ground by this lake. It's so beautiful here, and hopefully I won't have any alligators come up and visit me. I know that's not related to creativity, but unlike Georgia, every time I find a lake, there's always a sign that says don't swim, don't fish, don't walk near the water because of alligators and snakes. Hopefully this video will not end up with me being dinner. That would be totally uncool. So today I want to talk to you about this creativity spectrum in which one end is chaotic and one end is ordered. Chaotic thinking and ordered thinking. Now this spectrum comes from these guys right here, Ward, Fink, and Smith, and their research on creative cognition. Their research had a huge impact on my research in the area of creativity and teacher education. Specifically this idea of a spectrum of ordered and chaotic thinking, and you're probably going to fall somewhere on that spectrum. So when you hear the words ordered and chaotic, I don't want you to think of that in terms of negative or positive attributes. It's simply the terms that these researchers gave to their ends of the spectrum. No one is either all of one or all of another. Quick alligator check. I thought I heard something in the water. Before I get into their research and what that could mean to you, I want to tell you why this research got my attention. In grad school, we, the art education majors, were working together with the elementary education majors. And one of the things we had to do was design a joint lesson plan. So you would have a couple of art ed majors and a couple of elementary majors working together on a team. And one of the things that I noticed when we were looking at ideas and just discussing options for our lesson was the behaviors and attitudes and comfort level that these different types of majors had. It was just very, very interesting to me. And again, this isn't pro one, con another. It's just an observation. And once I latched onto that observation, I began noticing it everywhere and building on my observations, my research, and Fink, Ward, and Smith's research. So for example, when we were sitting at the table talking about ideas, the art ed majors, who tend to be on the more chaotic side of the spectrum, were very loose in their ideas, and they weren't overly attached to any of them. So if you can picture it in the sense of they would like throw ideas on the table, move them around, discard them. If this person threw one out, you're like, oh no, this won't work because of this, or blah, blah, blah. And it was very fluid, very, very fast, and it came very readily to them. Whereas the elementary education majors were very methodical and precise, and the ideas, if they put an idea on the table and someone, maybe an art person, like, oh no, that won't work because of this, or no, we're not going to do anything with googly eyes, I would watch that person like withdraw into themselves, like, oh, my idea was rejected, and they would stop engaging in the conversation. And I thought that was very interesting. Why was it that the art ed majors could so readily put out these ideas and not be attached to them? And why were the elementary education majors so hesitant to put forth an idea that they didn't put forth very many? And when they did, if that idea got rejected, it shut them down. And I'm going to get into that in just a second. The other thing I observed that was very interesting is when we were looking at the types of materials we would have readily available, the art ed majors were very playful in their approach. Well, what if we put this and this? What if we turn it upside down, inside out? You know, well, what if we tear it? Well, what if we don't use that and use something else? And the elementary education majors were more along the lines of, I did this kit one year and it was really easy and we could do this, this, and this, and then we could have this project. So I'm going to break that down a little more. The art ed majors were approaching it in the sense that we don't have a plan. We're going to play with the materials and see what might or might not happen. And they were ready to dive in right there with that plan. Whereas the elementary education majors were looking at it like, okay, we have all these materials, we don't have a plan, so I'm going to pull from my past experiences where I had a plan or craft or project that used these materials, and I know that if I follow these steps 1 through 5, we're going to get something successful. Now, the art education majors were like, oh no, that's done all the time. We don't want to do that. We're not going to use paper plates or googly eyes or glitter or pipe cleaners. And that was like, the elementary education majors were like, but why? Why would you not use these things? And so it was a little bit, well, it wasn't a little bit, it was actually quite a bit of tension that came from those discussions. And at the time I wasn't able to break it down like I am now, like I can in hindsight with the added benefit of years of additional research and reading. What was going on is that, for example, if you have a paper plate and you have some googly eyes and some yarn and some cut shapes and some pipe cleaners, and you follow these steps, you know that you can create, let's say, a person's face on the paper plate. And you know that it's going to look face-like, and all the people sitting here will have a successful project. And that's great as far as the elementary educators are concerned. But for the art education majors, they're going to reject those readily made materials because they want to experiment with, okay, well, I know you can buy googly eyes, but how else could we make googly eyes? What if we scrunch up a bunch of blue paper and then scrunch up some white paper or black paper and just kind of collage it and make an eye? So they're investigating the possibilities from the raw materials, whereas the elementary education majors were not doing that. And they had not done that before, so you do have that element of experience, practical experience. The art ed majors had more experience playing with materials than the elementary education majors. But even after we came to sort of a truce as to the project that we were going to make, there was still a lot of hesitation on their part, and there was still a lack of willingness to experiment, and there was a lack of trust in themselves and also in this on-the-fly lesson plan as to, was it going to be successful? How do you know it's going to be successful if you haven't done it before? And I got to thinking about that. And according to Ward, Fink, and Smith, the elementary educators were clearly falling on the more ordered side of the spectrum, and the art educators were clearly falling on the more chaotic side of the spectrum. Why? Why is that, and how does that affect creativity, and how does it affect your creativity now as an adult and as an educator? Well, here's what I think is coming into play. If you're in education, let's say elementary education, you have gone through a system of education and most likely been very successful in it. And if you think about the structure of education, you know that it is, by nature, very structured. 1 + 1 = 2. On the multiple choice test, you have to circle the right one. So to be successful in education, your entire focus is on getting the one right answer every time and learning and remembering the one right answer. Here comes a little visitor. Hello there. More of them. I thought I escaped. You know, the playground is at the other end of the lake. Okay, so my visitors, they're so sweet, so I just talked to them for a minute. So, okay, back to where I was. If you're talking about education and you're talking about how you've achieved success within a certain arena of education, your focus for those 12 years, and then if you had another 4 years of higher education, have been on getting the one right answer, not exploring your options. What do you need to do to get the high score, to get the right answer, to get all the test things correct? They've run back into the bushes. Hold on. Okay, so I use this break to resituate the camera, and you can see a little bit more of the lake while I'm recording, and also the sun's not coming in quite so hard into my face. So anyway, where was I? So if you've been successful in education, then you're very used to that type of format in which there is an objective, a learning objective, or a project, or a chapter, or something that you've got to get through. And there are expectations of what need to be learned, and there are answers within the content, and you need to find it, and you need to memorize it or do something with it, and then present that back in some way, whether it is a paper or a test format or a project. So that's where your practice has been. Whereas in art education, artists and your classical creative types are very used to having the unknown. That's part of the allure of it from them. What can I do with this? What else might this be? So, I mean, that's not intimidating to them because they're comfortable with it. They have achieved a comfort level with it because they have experimented and explored with materials and mediums their entire life. And they probably have a higher tolerance of risk, which means it's okay if we put these things together and it doesn't work. We'll just try something new. So what do you do? What I'm hoping with this video is to just give you something to think about and reflect on for you personally. Okay, I had to have a water break. It's a lot of talking. So what happens if you're listening to this right now and you are a third grade teacher and you really would like to be more creative in your classroom with your students, with your lesson assignments, but you recognize yourself in some of the stuff I'm sharing. You know that you prefer the craft kits, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I like to do those sometimes too. You know, you get, especially now with the season, you buy the ornament kit, all the materials are listed out for you, and then step by step, you know exactly what to do, and you're gonna have this ornament. So this can be a lot of fun. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're talking about fostering creativity, if that's the only thing you do in your classroom, and if that's the only thing that you're comfortable with, then I suggest that you consider expanding that a little bit more. What does that mean? That means that within a classroom, you have projects and you allow for outcomes that aren't scripted. So if you have materials, let's say you do have those materials for an ornament kit. Let's back up even further. Let's say this isn't for classroom. Let's say this is for you. And you have the materials. Would it be okay if you did it other than how it was, other than how the instructions said? Would you have to do the same pattern? Could you do it a little bit differently? And it might feel kind of icky to you at first. I mean, I've seen people have that reaction when they're pushed into doing something that's outside of their script. So that's one way that you can start to edge a little bit closer to the chaotic side of the spectrum. And I interpret chaotic to mean to be freer with your ideas and less attached to a predetermined outcome. If you're in the ordered end of the spectrum, what are you going to do? Now, let's flip that, and wow, now we have so many kids here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish the video right here. There's so many of them. I might have to go to a different part of the lake. There's no escape from children. No, I mean, I like kids fine. It's just, you know, one of the things when you're filming live, here comes one. I hear the little patter of feet. There they go. And one of them fell. I'm sorry. Alright, Mama's got him, so he's good. For now, but you know how little kids are. They have to cry for a little bit. I don't think they realize really that I'm videoing, and that's okay. Okay, so I have, so let me, I have to get re-comfortable on the, re-comfortable, is that a word? It is now. I'm getting re-comfortable on these steps because I keep moving around. The light's changing, and the kids are changing. Anyway, but you know, that is also part of being an educator. You're not ever going to have a perfect classroom experience where you got to get used to interruptions. So let's see, where was I? Okay, so if you're listening and you realize that you're on that ordered end of the spectrum, and you like and need that heavy structure in your life within creative, when you're doing some sort of craft or project, or when you're making a physical thing, I would encourage you to try things that are a little more open-ended. Now that sounds very vague, and it is, so let's make it a little more specific. So let's say you get some kind of craft and it has a guide for how you should paint it. Maybe you're making a sign for your classroom and you have a printout in front of you and it says, okay, if you're going to paint these colors, then you're going to turn out with this picture. So to practice being a little more chaotic in your thinking, a little more creative, make your own color choices. And you know what? It's okay if they don't work. You can paint over it. It's okay if you don't like it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a try. Even if you just try one color, and for those of you that know that you're on the chaotic end of the spectrum, or more towards that, you're like, oh, that's easy. That's not a thing. I mean, why would you tell somebody something so simple like just try to change one color? That's what I'm talking about. Because if somebody is way on the structured side of this creativity spectrum, changing that one color is a risk. Changing that one color or changing the pattern makes them uncomfortable. And I've seen them be physically uncomfortable in class when I ask them to do something that changes it up. So, just to wrap it up here, before I have more guests, within Fink, Ward, and Smith's creative cognition spectrum, you have ordered thinking and chaotic thinking. Those aren't negative or positive connotations. Those are just the labels they gave them. If you're on, I forget which side I said which thing. Okay, let's see. Ordered and chaotic. So if you're on the chaotic end, if you're even a little bit towards the chaotic end, you are more comfortable with change, uncertainty, open-ended outcomes, and risk. If you're towards the ordered side of that spectrum, you are less comfortable with risk, open-ended things. In fact, you prefer and will seek out projects and lessons and things that have a very clear, and when I say lessons, I mean like creative lessons within your class, not creative math lessons. You're going to have to make sure that 2 + 2 still equals 4, but you're going to seek out those things that are in your comfort zone. Literally, those are the 2 comfort zones.